Can you see us?
I've been to Costa Rica a couple times, been in Mexico.
Yes, I can, and I can hear you too.
Okay.
Never been across the pond, so
Yeah,
that's a goal of mine.
it's definitely worth it if you ever get a chance to go.
You got the whole kit and caboodle yourself.
Well, congratulations, after how many years?
Yeah, 13.
Good for you.
Thank you. Hard.
On. We're going to call the December 19th, 2023 Planning Commission to order at 6:30. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it
To
stands,
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Commissioner Freiberger, online. Commissioner Cox?
Present.
Here.
Present.
Commissioner Johnson?
Present.
Commissioner Fournette?
Here.
Commissioner Maddox, absent. Commissioner Fatisi, present. Commissioner Huggins?
Here.
Present. Okay, has everyone had the ability to take a look at the November 20th, 2023 meeting minutes? And is there any suggested changes? I personally don't have any.
I do have one correction.
What is it?
So the public hearing motion, it was moved by Commissioner Koch and seconded by Commissioner Johnson. All in favor. It just didn't state who made the motion and who seconded.
Okay,
Sorry, can you repeat who seconded?
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you.
anything else? Commissioner Purnett usually have a really good eye for
I
periods
missed
and
that one.
commas and.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
I missed my own second.
So do we have a motion to approve with the, with that following adjustment you have to do?
I move to approve the amendments as amended.
Okay, do I have a
Or the-
second?
I second.
Minutes as amended.
Okay, so where we, Commissioner Fournette seconded. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed, 0. Motion carries. With that just one last little thing. So I will now open the general public comments section of the meeting at 6:33 PM. Prior to opening the general comments, if anyone wishes to speak, please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments may also be submitted via email or mail ahead of all scheduled monthly planning commission meetings and read into the record at that time. If you would like to speak, please state your name and address or any group or organization you represent. So we're open at 6:33. Is there anything that was in emails or mail or anything that needs to get read into the record?
No written comments.
Okay. Is anybody in the audience willing to speak or here to speak?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Paul Heap, 8643 Westerman Road, Sedro-Woolley. Talked last meeting last month about a piece of ground that I have that's in the city limits, and we could not do a boundary line adjustment on it because the adjacent property is mine, but it's in the county. And this piece of property that I'm talking about is 804 Jones Road, right at the edge of the city limits. And I would like to be able to sell the house off with a lot and keep the rest in farmland. The rest of my land is all being farmed. Coming year, it will be potatoes. But just to keep it in farmland and just sell a 100 by 20 foot square lot off or whatever we agree on. I've had a renter in there for almost 13 years, and they've been excellent renters, and they would like to buy it. And I'm at the age that I need to start cutting back on some of the real estate, so that's all I have. Any questions?
You know, I think Nicole is going to look into that a little bit more.
Hence the shadow platting.
Oh, okay. Okay, no worries. So we're going to talk more about it later on.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So if there is no one else, I will close the general public comments meeting at 6:36 PM. So we have no public hearings scheduled for tonight, and we do have unfinished business and a document called Agenda Number G.1 that we're going to speak about. It's the proposed amendments to Chapter 16.04 SWMC to add a definition for shadow plat and allow shadow platting as a method of satisfying the minimum density requirement of 4 dwelling units per acre. So with that, Ms. McGowan, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So at our last meeting, the Planning Commission discussed how under the current subdivision regulations, applicants that wish to subdivide their property have to meet a minimum density of 4 units per acre. That was a framework that was put together by the Growth Management Hearings Board under the Growth Management Act to prevent urban sprawl within cities. But many Sedro-Woolley residents have requested to perform subdivisions of their property at less than 4 units per acre with the intention of selling the remaining property or developing the remaining property to that density in the future. There are currently no provisions in the code that allow for the eventual satisfaction of the minimum density requirement. Applicants have to develop 4 units per acre at minimum, otherwise the subdivision application cannot be processed. At the last meeting, planning staff and the Planning Commission discussed methods that other jurisdictions like Mount Vernon have put into code to allow development at under 4 units per acre density. And it was voiced that the Planning Commission saw shadow platting as the preferred method for Sedro-Woolley, as it would be in line with the requirements of the GMA, allowing for the eventual satisfaction of the 4 units per acre density minimum, and allows for some flexibility for applicants to subdivide within their means and desires. So staff was tasked with creating a draft amendment to the subdivision code to add a definition for shadow platting and to identify how applicants can use it in combination with a short plat application to satisfy those minimum density requirements. So the definition for shadow platting that I've included under Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code 1604-030 reads, shadow plat is the non-binding map or representation demonstrating that a property is capable of future subdivision according to current development regulations at minimum residential density. And then also under 1604-060, I've identified how shadow platting can be used to meet the 4 units per acre requirement. And that's modeled off of the Mount Vernon code language. The new language reads, "Shadow platting may be used to satisfy the minimum density requirements if the applicant can demonstrate that the proposed techniques would allow the eventual satisfaction of minimum density requirements through future development. The applicant must demonstrate that the current and proposed development will not preclude the provision of adequate access and infrastructure necessary for future development. A property owner subdividing property shall submit to the city a shadow plat with the subdivision application materials, demonstrating that said property is capable of further subdivision according to current development regulations at minimum residential density. The submitted shadow plat need only identify proposed rights-of-way and lot sizes yielding the required density. Said shadow plat is not non-binding and need not be recorded, provided that any proposal seeking to further develop the property in a manner which differs from the original shadow plat shall demonstrate that said development accommodates appropriate rights-of-way and continues to yield the minimum residential density required. Amending a shadow plat shall be an administrative process."
Apologies.
So after having reviewed and discussed these amendments tonight, I'll ask that the Planning Commission recommend any changes to the proposed amendments and determine if we're ready for a public hearing at the next Planning Commission. Thank you.
I apologize. Thank you. It was turning off. I have one question. I took a look at a 40-acre parcel off of Sap Road, and it's in the city limits, and it's an R5 zone, but there is absolutely no way you're going to be able to get that kind of density up in this area, just for the fact of the roads. I don't even know if we have the amount of sanitation that we need. So in this particular case, when we shadow something, somebody could still go ahead and do a 1-acre parcel as long as it's got a bunch of boxes in there for something in the future. Is that correct? They're not mandated.
Yes,
to,
that's correct.
and that's what the shadow zoning, the shadowing does. Anybody else?
I think I favor this kind of approach to deal with situations as Mr. Heap described, if it's on a case-by-case basis. So this would be applicable through the entire city, is that right?
Yes, in all residential zones.
And you had mentioned, I think, last time that Mount Vernon had something similar. Have they had any, I guess the concern is abuse of shadow platting, or?
Not that I'm aware of. Essentially, the shadow platting is useful as it gives city staff a chance to really review and say, hey, this is a good idea or it's not, based on what services are able to be provided currently or in the future. So these can be rejected on a case-by-case basis if it's found that it's not a good fit because, say there's no sewer out there and everything out there needs to have a septic, and it's just not reasonable, right? So I don't think there's been any abuse, as city staff has that say whether or not it's a good fit for that area.
As long as it's backstopped by city staff, I think it's a great idea.
I mean, I would agree with my fellow commissioner. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a nice way to kind of find like a middle ground, and also I think it gives a lot more opportunity for the average property owner, because I know that there is tons and tons of cost prohibitions that come with developing a parcel, and so this just kind of provides an opportunity to kind of push themselves one step closer to being able to do that, and to be able to, use their land, but at the same time, there's kind of I guess you'd say a way out, right? So like if it never ever happens, then it never ever happens, and if the property gets sold, then, it continues on the way it does, right? And they can choose to develop it how they will. So, I mean, I think it gives a lot of flexibility. I like the fact that the staff, city staff can approve or disapprove of these on a case-by-case basis and go through a review process. And, a lot of our time is spent with big developers with fairly deep pockets. And so it's nice to be able to at least provide an opportunity for someone who doesn't have that to be able to maybe make something of themselves or be able to use their property as they would like to see fit.
Commissioner Freiberger.
So, Commissioner Fatizzi had actually asked me if I would ask at Mount Vernon a little bit about the R 3.0 zone, but I don't know if it's really relevant to talk about that now because shadow platting really makes the most sense. But if staff would like me to send over an email with a little bit of information on it, I can. I didn't do it in advance of the meeting because I wasn't really sure the protocol for that. But anyway, to this particular point, though, I like it. It seems simple. And one thing I noticed when I was looking at the Mount Vernon's Chapter 17, 118, it's interesting, and I didn't think about this when I was talking with our principal planner in Mount Vernon and just kind of had her give me a rundown on shadow platting, as well as the R 3.0 zone. But that it seems to indicate it's a standard for urban residential density in the urban growth area. And does it specifically say that that applies outside of that, which is interesting to me. Nicole, do you have any thoughts on that? I don't see why it couldn't be applied citywide, but it is interesting that, and it looks like the way we've proposed it in our code, that is what we're proposing to do. But
Yeah, so I can kind of speak to that a little bit. I wasn't actually aware that Mount Vernon was only for the urban growth area. I think that's kind of in respect to the GMA's requirement to reduce urban sprawl. Typically where that will occur is within those urban growth areas where services aren't as readily available. So I think that may be just Mount Vernon's way of handling it. For the city, most of our vacant parcels within the city are going to be these larger ones on the periphery. So I don't personally see any issue with requiring or allowing this in residential zones throughout the city, as most of what's central has already been developed.
and I can certainly follow up on that. It was kind of a quick rundown, and I was taking notes and just totally missed that in the header there. So I don't know, maybe it does apply citywide in Mount Vernon. It's just, I was looking elsewhere in the code and I wasn't seeing any reference. And so I just wasn't sure. And the kind of the headline there caught my eye and I was going, that's interesting. So I did, let me see if I have a note here. Something, well, no, it has to do with the R1 zone, so not really applicable to this. So, because we're just sticking with the minimum for dwelling unit density and just achieving that with the shadow platting. And I think that makes the most sense, so.
Okay. And with respect to the R 3.0 zone, I'd be happy to get any information on that you have. But I think at this time, shadow platting is probably as you said, the simplest way to go about kind of the agenda that we're going for today. Adding a new zone in, I think, would be something we would want to look at more under a comprehensive plan update, since we're going to have to be doing that kind of holistically. We're going to be looking at possibly increasing density and things like that. We may need a new residential zone, something like that, depending on land capacity analysis. So I think that it'd be smarter to wait to try to address new zoning if we're going to do that.
And I guess to your point, I can share this then, and why shadow platting does seem the path of least resistance and also the easiest to maintain or implement in Sedro-Woolley. Actually, when I was doing a little bit of research on the R1 3.0 zone, I kind of misstated it there. The land use element of the Mount Vernon comprehensive plan talks about it in its policies, and then in its appendix, it gives a little bit of background for how they came up with that reduced density. And you already covered it, pretty well in the staff report on how the lots have to meet certain very specific criteria in order to be able to be considered R1 3.0. And I think that might be very challenging for Sedro-Woolley to do anyway. And as a planner, you would know best, of course. But interestingly enough, in Appendix A, they even referenced a legal thing that happened in Sedro-Woolley that referenced the 4 dwelling units per acre, and kind of made for some interesting reading there. As I was told by our principal planner, and as you pretty much stated, it's not a law, so to speak, but it is basically a bright line rule, and it's the recommended way of showing what's urban versus what's considered rural. So there's a good reason for the 4 dwelling units per acre minimum density. So anyway, it makes sense to me doing the shadow platting, and that's all I have on that.
Thank you. Let it be noted that Commissioner Maddox is with us. And with that, Silas, feel free to comment.
I wasn't here last meeting, but I've been reading up on these shadow plats, and it seems to me that it's a good solution. And so that's where I'm at, and I'll be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. Commissioner Fournette.
I think, first thought, right off the bat, this is a great idea, and I'm all for it. I'd vote for it in a heartbeat. It's actually my second choice, though, and first choice would be to do away with the 4 dwellings per acre minimum. I don't even think it should be there, because R5 means up to 5 homes. To me, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If I could wave a magic wand, that's what would happen, but it sounds like we're pretty well stuck with this, and there's no changing that. So as a second choice, I would choose shadow platting, because I think it's a good, happy medium. It's a win-win situation. It does what the board wants us to do, the growth management, whatever they're called. What'd you call it? Hearing board?
Hearings board,
Yeah,
yes.
the quasi-judicial hearing board, whatever. Anyway, it satisfies what they're trying to do, and it satisfies what we're trying to do to allow 1 or 2 homes or whatever, and then eventually grow up. And I think it's a smoother transition from farmland to the higher density. You don't want to just have an apartment complex right next to a farmland. You want to ease your way in, so we have R5 towards the outside, and then R7s, and then R15s towards the middle of this town. So it makes sense to gradually work your way to higher density. And if he's going to be farming with his 90 acres, why put, 15 houses right on the edge of the farmland? Let him farm until he's done farming. And I don't know how many properties qualify for this shadow, whatever you call it. What is it again? Shadow
platting.
planning, yeah. Platting. I don't know how many qualify for this, but I would imagine if there were 10 of them, 9 of them or 8 would probably want to be highest density. They'd probably want to pack them in there as tight as they could get them. So why not let 1 or 2 or 3 of these people have the lighter density? I think it's great. And they're
Thank you.
paying the taxes on the place. Why not let them do it their way?
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Huggins.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Joe, and I agree with everything that everybody else has said here. I think that the shadow plotting is a really good idea. And what I like most about it is that the process allows property owners and developers and builders to have some flexibility in their design, and I'm always for that as someone who studied architecture. And but I like that it's backstopped by the planning director, so that abuse of the process can be stopped. And so anyway, I think it's a great thing. It's nothing we couldn't change later if there was a problem with it, just like anything else in our codes. So I think it's a great idea, and we should give it a try.
So with that, where did you get the definition for the shadow plot? Is this something you pulled off of another jurisdiction, or is this
My
like the
brain.
accepted?
Oh, you didn't plagiarize it?
No,
Oh, that was really good.
thank you.
I like them both, and this is a real easy way to accommodate it, that it is actually in the code. And right now, it seems we have some situations where this is not only useful, but again, yeah, there are some bigger parcels out there that I wasn't even aware of when I ran across that 40 acres that I took a look at just a week ago. So this will be something for someone else to have some type of tool available for them. So I guess next meeting, we're going to do a public hearing. Is that what we're going to do? And then we'll make the recommendations to change the language to council after that public hearing.
Yeah, if everyone agrees to a public hearing, I'm happy to do that.
Okay?
Quick question for you. Just wanting some clarification, it talks about the applicant must demonstrate that the current and proposed development will not preclude the provision of adequate access and infrastructure necessary for future development. So does the infrastructure have to be there, or is it just that they have to have it within their proposal of what they're going to do?
So essentially, what that means is you have to show on your shadow plat that there is enough space to meet access requirements for fire department. There's enough space to put your utilities in. There's enough space for you to meet your minimum lot sizes, all of that. So your infrastructure for the lots that you're actually subdividing through the short plat do need to be in place. But for the remainder of the property, you just have to show there's enough space and that connections are available to be made.
So if the property was entirely on septic, but there was at least a reasonably accessible point for hooking up to city sewage, then that would suffice, or does the property itself already have to be connected?
So thinking on how we typically run subdivisions, just on a general basis, the city does require, if sewer is available in the street, that all new properties do connect to it. So we'd essentially do the same thing here. Is sewer in the street? Yes. So under the shadow plat, you'd kind of note, sewer's in the street, future development will connect at that time.
So we're not enforcing that mandate at that time. Because I know our capacity, just even hearing from Director Freiberger, that we're getting pretty tight. And the parcel I looked at when I did the math of 40 acres and just did a PRD calculation on it, I'm not too sure we have the capacity in certain areas. I mean, the sewer line's there, but they're going to pump stations and a bunch of other things. But we're not going to link that at this particular time. It's just simply more of a filing thing that's available in the future, and you cross that road when you get to it.
Right.
There's a lot of roads like Sap Road is barely the size of a wide driveway.
Yeah, and again, it'd be up to the planning director when we review applications. So say that there is one where sewer is not available and the only option is septic. It would be a reach out to the Department of Health and say, hey, is this something that we're wanting to do? And if all things point to yes, then, development is development as long as it's a permitted use within the zone. I can't tell people no. There are very few properties. I can think of 2 roads where sewer isn't available, so it wouldn't be the case very often at all, but.
Go ahead.
Using the term "not available," there's a certain amount of distance, meaning you have to connect if you're this far, but you don't have to if you're that far.
Right, I think it's 300 feet, something like that.
300?
Don't quote me on that. I can
Okay, but
check,
there is,
But there are.
there's a threshold somewhere.
There is a threshold, right? So, but if you're within that distance and there's physical constraints, right? So the sewer line, say it doesn't have the depth that you need to actually, without a pump station being installed, that's something that the city would have to do. So we're looking at, in those cases, if the city's not wanting to install a pump station due to budget issues or something like that. In those cases, we'd look at septic. But again, those are those 2 roads that I can think of that the depth just isn't there to, without a pump station, have sewer connection.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than that. It's not just the sanitation end of it, it's also the water end of it. Beachley, as an example, there's a 5-acre lot that you can do maybe about 18 to 20 units up there under a PRD, but there's only a 2-inch PVC line at the top. Now to run that, it's a minimum according to PUD, an 8-inch line that needs to be run, and a $275 a lineal foot going from Township Highway 9 all the way to the top of that. Some of these costs are prohibitive. Just because we zone something, we might not have the ability to even have it deployed by whoever the developer is, simply because it's not just the sanitation end of it. It's surface water, it's regular water, and there's other things. But this accomplishes what we need right now. And it does beg, do we need another zone, when we start talking next year, to bring it down to an R4 zone? Because right now our lowest is an R5. So just something for thought later on. Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to schedule a public hearing for our next meeting. And thank you, you did a great job.
Thank you.
So on to, anybody have any other comments here? So we have no new business on the agenda. Planning Commission discussion items. One in particular, both Eric and Paul, I can't thank you enough for what you guys have done for this commission and just involved in, when I'm thinking about your 13 years, there's been a lot of things that were that were hard, that weren't easy. I'm thinking of going back to PRDs and just all kinds of stuff. So we're going to miss you guys. But Paul, you're moving on. So now we get to recommend to you, so at least you know where it's coming from.
I will be an advocate. And it's just, your 13 years certainly trumped my short term. But it's been an honor to serve with such excellent public servants, including Nicole and the rest of the commission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, dang, 13 years.
13 years older.
Yeah.
13 years wiser.
I was 24 when I got onto here.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't imagine making a list of everything that we've accomplished over that time. There's just so much work that's been done, and the UVMU and the PRD are probably the 2 biggest ones. I mean, they took up massive amounts of time, but there was a ton of little stuff here and there throughout. So, I'm proud of the work that we've done. Proud to have worked alongside y'all over the course of that time. Have got to work with several other planning commissioners. I have great respect for all of them. You guys in particular, I gotta say, was probably the best group. You had You guys have great questions. You come prepared. You also have the amazing ability to turn something that I think would take 20 minutes into an hour and a half discussion.
It's an art.
It is an art. You guys put Congressman to shame. But it's been fun. It's been a real joy, a real privilege, a real honor. Mayor Julia Johnson honored me at the last council meeting. Nicole, I was told that there would be a check, if you could. Just kidding.
Lead the
But moving on to other things, I've been given the honor of becoming the school board president and doing some other stuff in the community. So I'll be here. I'll still be watching. I still have a huge investment in this community, and I know that you guys will continue to do the amazing work. And happy that a good friend of mine, Matt Devoyne, is joining you guys. I know he's going to come very well prepared and have a lot of really good and tough questions. So I know that the next wave of recruits is going to contribute well. So thank you all.
Would anybody else like to add in? Go ahead.
No, I'm not big on speeches, but it's been a pleasure working with you, Eric. And yeah.
Likewise. It's been fun.
Thank you.
With that again. I noticed Mayor Johnson is in the audience. Would you like to add anything in for your son before he departs us?
That's very, very kind of you, Chairman Battizi, to allow me to do that. Actually, I think Eric did a beautiful job of just sharing what it has meant to him, and certainly he has done a wonderful job, but it's been a teamwork. You all have done a fantastic job of contributing to the policies and to the growth and to the changes that are happening here in Sedro-Woolley. So with great respect, I say thank you not only to Eric Johnson, my son, who I'm very proud of, but to all of you, because I am very grateful, as all citizens are, whether they're aware of it or not, that we are grateful that you're there and you're doing the hard work and you are appreciated more than you know. So thank you all. And thank you, Eric, for the last 13 years that you have served graciously.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And thank you. Yes, it's appreciated to be acknowledged positively.
Well, like you and I have talked, Chairman Fatizzi, numerous times, a lot of the work that we do, it's amazing that we do it to an empty room because it has such a huge impact. And it has impacts for decades to come. And it really helps shape and guide and move the city in different directions. So it's really important work that the commission does. And clearly we do a really good job because more often than not, the city council will take what we recommend and run with it. And they've entrusted us with a lot of stuff. So I think all of you should be very, very proud.
Thank you. And I couldn't agree more. Anyway, at this time, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Sure,
Commissioner Fatisi,
sure.
a moment. Sorry. I just wanted to also say thank you to Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Koch. It's been a pleasure serving with both of you. And best wishes in your future endeavors. We're going to miss you.
I'm sorry, Danielle, I wasn't bypassing you. I just
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Johnson. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second.
Okay, we have multiple seconds.
Beat you.
Do we have any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? Meeting is closed at 7:09 PM. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.